You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Well, as you know, it's not Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, but it's Mighty Blue on the Southwest Coast Path. And wow, I've just done 3 days. I am freaking exhausted. It's Wednesday night. I'm sitting here, sitting in my room, recording all 3 days. And first up, I've got to say, love the trail. And so thanks to all the trail maintainers who keep this trail in such great condition. It's different to the Appalachian Trail, very different. Incredibly exposed these first 3 days have been. And yet it looks dangerous. There are some kind of freakishly close climbs along or walks along the coastal path that have a pretty dire fall on the right as you look at it. But, you know, I can't fault the trail. You know, it's 3 days has been a long 3 days, 34 miles, I think it is. And I'm with my friend John, and we've enjoyed it a lot. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. And I think I said to John today that I relish this sort of the difficulty of it. And I really did find it quite difficult today. And he's found it quite difficult as well. But he's so determined to keep up with me that he's quite happy to just carry on as we are. Now the bad news, unfortunately. I lost all my notes tonight as I was preparing to record. And, you know, I kind of like to put a proper professional sort of show out to you guys, but I've tried to recreate some of them, but, you know, I'm not happy with what I have. I know I've forgotten some moments. I'm going to try to add as many moments as I can. And I've decided that going forward, I'm going to record each night to avoid this happening again. I promise you it will get better. I promise you there will be more detail, but stick with me right now as I try to tell you what happened on day number 1. Day 1, from Minehead to Porlock Weir, 8.9 miles. By the way, these mileages, it feels like somehow they're being made up as they go along. I'm sure we did more than that, but, you know, I'm going to go with these official miles, maybe because we took a few extra steps and went different directions, I guess. Now, we stayed the previous night. We actually drove down from where John lives, my old hometown, Southend, home of the Mighty Blues, by the way. And we drove down the previous day, stayed at a place called the Old Ship Ground, which is a pub, and about as close a place to the start of the Southwest Coast Path. There's this big marker. I've had a picture. I put it on Facebook. Hopefully you've seen it, of me at the trail. What we did, we checked in on the Sunday night, and we decided to just walk back. Actually, go to a pub. Actually, we walked past the marker and took our pictures there. And I said to John, you know, tomorrow morning you don't have to go back there, but he didn't. So he was happy not to go back there in the morning. But I can't help myself. If I'm starting the trail, I want to be starting with my pack on. And so I did that the next morning, went with my pack on. And it was great to be there. I was by myself, obviously. So I took another picture of it with me in full pack, and I was ready to go. So I walked back to the old ship aground and went in for breakfast. So all hikes should start this way. You should walk about 200 or 300 yards, then go and have breakfast. We had a massive breakfast, of course, and eventually, I think we left about 9:45, maybe 10 o'clock. Certainly no early starts hiking with John. He's not a great one for heading out too early. We went along the seafront, obviously in the direction of the path, and then we turned left away from the seafront up this place called North Hill. And this was a section of switchbacks, which of course I kind of love on the AT, but seeing them here was quite helpful. But some of the ups here were quite steep. You know, at each of our days so far, there's been an uphill and quite a substantial uphill. And I think, you know, it's certainly, if I'm going to have an uphill, I want it to be right at the very beginning. And it was certainly that way today, in this particular time. At the top, there was the option to take the rugged cliff top path or the regular coast path. You know, I could have taken the rugged one. I chose not to. The wind was really kicking up by now, and we were expecting 50-mile-an-hour gusts. I'm pretty sure they reached that speed. I've been a bit taken aback, actually, by the way in which the wind is I don't know why I'm surprised by this, by the way. The wind's coming off the sea, and it's sweeping straight up and hitting us in the face quite often. And I'm wondering, you know, I don't think I could have pitched a tent in this first 3 days. So God knows what people do. They probably go to proper campsites where they're a bit more protected. But fortunately, I haven't had to pitch a tent these 3 days. I think that will be starting in a couple of days' time. But as I say, we didn't take the rugged cliff top path. We went to the regular coast path. And it was the wind. I don't think I've ever experienced wind quite as strong as this wind on a hike. Because once you get to the top, it becomes so exposed. And I suppose the expression that I've heard somebody use somewhere in the guidebook is that this is where the moorland meets the sea. We're on Exmoor, and this is one of these wide open moors where, as I say, the wind sweeps across it, and you get this feeling you've been knocked about, buffeted the whole time, really. The rest of the way, as I say, I've been, my notes are gone. I know we had some more interesting times, so I apologise for this first episode, as I say. Most of the rest of the way was kind of small ups and downs, but generally we were pretty much hiking high up with the wind, with the sea on our right, obviously, and we didn't have any big climbs. There were no more big climbs that day. Actually, there were a few downhills, and one such downhill was we went a little inland into Bossington Village, where, being a Brit, I was absolutely sure we'd find a pub. There was no pub there. I couldn't believe it. I'd come over here expecting us to stop in the odd village every now and then to fill up with water and fill up with beer, have a bite to eat, and just carry on out. Hasn't been that way so far. These first 3 days have been quite isolated. You know, we walked today, for example, 14 miles, I think it was, and it was a particularly lonely path. I think we saw about 5 or 6 other hikers. There was virtually nowhere to stop. You know, I don't mind that at all. But I was kind of hoping for a little more interaction because I wanted to go into the local community and maybe get a bit of extra toothpaste or get some trail mix or something like that. But we went into this Bossington Village, and as I say, we didn't find a pub, and we headed back out towards the sea, and we ended up walking across a marsh into Porlock, which was our stop for the day. And we, I don't know what happened. We were going through this marsh, and it was very marshy because they've had a huge amount of rain in the last 4 or 5 months, apparently. It's been a nightmare for them. And we hit the seaside. We hit the beach, and we were walking on these large rocks. Seemed quite dangerous, so I got back up towards the path itself. And we ended up walking straight into Porlock itself. And do you know what? I've been lucky with the weather so far. It hasn't really rained on us. It has threatened all day long, each of the 3 days. It started to rain about 100 yards from the end of which was, of course, a pub. We went straight into the pub, had a quick beer. Actually, I think we had cider, actually. And we got the bus to Porlock, where we were staying. And if I can recommend a place highly for you to check out, is the immaculate Myrtle Cottage, run by 2 guys, Tyrone and Neil. cottage dates back to the 1530s. I know most Americans I know love the old part of England, and this cottage was beautifully done up, as you can imagine. But actually, the door, which is still there, painted a thick dark brown, dates back to the 1530s. That is the original door. Quite amazing, really. And then they recommended to us there was a pub across the road called the Ship Pub. We went there. We had something to eat. It was okay. It was fine. Had one beer. I'm really not going to get back into drinking too much on this trip. I'll have a couple of beers. I'm having shandy a lot, which is half what Americans call Sprite, but the Brits call lemonade, and half of that and half a beer, which really dilutes the drink and just refreshes me at the end of the day. But it was a good day. It was a short day, a relatively short day. We did it in about 5.5, 6 hours, I guess it was. And that was day one in the books. Day two, Porlock Weir to Linton, 12.1 miles. Well, I think I'm going to do this every day. I'm staying with John in these bed and breakfasts. We started off with a full English breakfast. And full English, just in case you don't know, is an egg, or 2 eggs in my case, fried, bacon, sausage, often blood pudding. I don't know what the real word for that is actually. Baked beans, some hash browns sometimes. Basically, it's a walking heart attack. Tons of fried, everything fried, and so tasty. And frankly, I make no apology for it because I'd done 28,000 steps the day before, or 27,000, I think it was actually. And I've been burning the calories. So you can eat fearlessly and guiltlessly, which I absolutely intend to do while I'm on this trip. In the morning, I forgot to tell you, we got a bus back to back from the pub the previous evening. It was right outside the pub. We saw it out there, went outside, and he took us right near where we were at Myrtle Cottage. And the following morning, we were hoping to do the same thing, get the bus back into Porlock Weir. Remember, we're staying in Porlock. We'd had to go back to Porlock Weir, which is probably about 2 miles nearer the coast, and that's where we were going to be starting day two. And we were waiting at the bus stop, although we weren't quite sure where the bus was going to go going back to Porlock Weir. We saw a guy called Simon, turns out to be Simon, opposite, and we were asking him if he knew where the bus was meant to be. He said, where are you going? I said, we're going down to Porlock Weir. He said, well, I'm going there now. Do you want me to give you a lift? Which is pretty cool. And in fact, John, when he finishes the hike on Friday evening, I think it is, we're going to stay the night there, wherever it is. I think it's going to be Braunton. And he contacted this Simon. He said to this Simon, I'm trying to get from Braunton to get back to Minehead to get my car so I can drive back home on Saturday morning. You don't happen to know if the buses run there? And he said, well, look, I do airport runs. I run people to the airport. I'd be happy to, for a price, obviously, to pick you up, take you to Minehead and back again. It's probably going to be about 60 miles each way. So it's not a short lift, but John was happy with the idea, so he went for it. And today, this was definitely a walk of two halves, with a nice wooded walk, mainly at the beginning, and it was through the quite gentle paths through the woods, and we sort of see glimpses, and obviously with less trees on the less leaves on the trees, we were able to see the sea probably more than we might do during the summer. But the second half, man, that was far more dramatic. We got buffeted by the wind yet again. As I said to you on yesterday's bit, yesterday's report, I'm I'm concerned about the prospects of wild camping. Certainly where I've been hiking the last 3 days, I can't think of a spot I could have put my tent that wouldn't have blown away in the middle of the night. So I'm going to have to think about that. But anyway, we another early climb, which was fine. Then we dipped back down again, and we came upon this church called Colbone Church. It had about 14 seats and claimed to be one of the smallest churches in the country. How anybody got there, I don't know. I presume I wouldn't call Colbone a village from what we saw. There were a few people, a few houses nearby, but the church was dated back to the 1300s, and there was a list of each of the pastors since then, named from 1360 something, I think it was, something like that. Luckily, the church was open to visitors, so we just wandered in. I always have a good feeling in churches, as you know, not religious, but I had this really comfortable feeling in there, a feeling of calmness, and I got that yet again. I'm very, somebody who doesn't believe, I'm very almost reverential. I would never be rude there. And ironically, John doesn't believe either, and we both took our hats off as we walked into it almost automatically. And we came out and I saw that the gravestones, which gravestones in British churches are well worth a read. There's some great little things that people write on the gravestones, and they're kind of bent all over the place, and they all dated back to the 1800s. It was great to see. The path continued on through the trees, and John introduced a new thing for me, which I've not done before. It was just stopping and listening. Every now and then he'd say, "Steve, should we stop?" And we stopped. And he'd listen to the birdsong, of which there was plenty, by the way. And then we'd listen to the sea. And that was always the background sound to our walk, was the sea. It was crashing on the waves below. We were 500 or 600 feet up. We could hear the sea really loud, and it was just magnificent to see. The other thing that we did, and this is John, not me, although I've got to say, I've adopted this as a great thing to do. There are so many benches on this path, some dedicated to people, but generally they exist all the way along the trail so far anyway. And they're a wonderful way to sit and look at the sea, have a rest, and two old guys in their 70s, we want to have a rest. But we did pass many benches. We sat there, we'd talk, and we'd take a picture, and then we'd head off. We didn't stop for more than, I don't know, 2-3 minutes maybe. But it was that time to regroup a bit, get our breath back a bit, and keep moving. As we went down, I wanted to get a cup of coffee. So the wind had really been wearing us out. We got down to this nice, quiet, very atmospheric spot with an old stone cross. And it was there for no apparent reason that I could see. There was nothing written on it at all. There were stones around it, and we just set up the jet boiled flesh, boiled some water, and had a cup of coffee. And as I say, it was atmospheric. I don't know what had happened there years ago, maybe. Because about, I don't know, 30 yards down the hill, there was what looked like a walled swimming pool. It was a pond, really. But the side of it was walls, obviously to protect the water from going further. I can't really imagine what it was used for, but it was nice to sit there and just look around and chill out on the walk. So we had another climb up, of course, near the end, but the down into Lynmouth was spectacular, with the wind really, really whipping up. As we crested a hill, it just whacked us in the face. My face is very red right now, and it isn't because of the sun. It's because of the wind that's been hitting me. And we had this beautiful hike all the way along this coastal path with, once again, steep fall off to the side, but never any real danger. There were plenty of people every now and then would come up in that part of the hike, obviously come up from Lynmouth, I guess, to get a bit of fresh air. And fresh air they certainly got. We got into Lynmouth and had a quick cider at the Ancient Mariner pub before walking 5 minutes to the Orchard House Hotel. John and I, to save money when we started, I'd booked rooms for the two of us to share, 2 twin beds and that. But we soon had enough of that. So at the Orchard House Hotel, I'd asked if they could give us each our own room. And John totally got the luck of the draw. I had a really small single bed. John got a really nice double bed, 4-poster bed, and he had a bath as well. So he was as happy as Larry. And it was a real good place. That's the end of day number 2. Day 3, Linton to Combe Martin, 13.7 miles, which means the total for these past 3 days was 34.7 miles. I've got to tell you, sitting here tired at about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, it's 10:30 at night, I am exhausted. So this has really tired me out. So I would never take this lightly. This is not an easy hike. It's a very tiring hike, and to do, and you always know I say do 8 miles when you first start. I should have started with 8 miles, but frankly, the way it's set up, this is a good itinerary to do, and it's tough to stop. Trying to do this 13.7 miles today, there was really nowhere else we could actually stop. Luckily, once again, a steep path out of Lynmouth took us up to Linton. Linton's the town that sits above Lynmouth. In fact, you can go up it by this great little, I don't know what they call it actually, a train that kind of, a bit like the French call a funicular, I think it is, goes up, and it's driven by water. And the water, I don't pretend to understand it, but the guy said, you just say you want to use this train and it will just go take you to the top of Linton. Of course, being hikers, we had to walk up there. And we passed lampposts along the way. And these lampposts were all solar powered, presented by the local community, which was pretty cool. But the best bit about the lampposts and about the whole path was that people had tacked various poems to those lampposts, and the path was known as Poets' Path. John, as he said, John tried a few, but they wouldn't do. They wouldn't do. He was having fun reading all the poems, trying to make up a few himself, and we got quite a bit of a kick out of that, and we started reading some, and people have put these up, I don't know, as much as 10 years ago, and they're still there, and they're a nice little way for the locals to enjoy the path, with of course the benches that are there all the time. But it was a steep path straight away again, took us right to the top again, and we saw a group rock climbing up a fairly high straight peak, which we were pleased we didn't have to climb up. There must have been 10 mountain goats up there. We actually walked around the corner, and we walked into about 3 or 4 of these mountain goats sitting on our path. They didn't seem to mind too much about us, and they just tootled off and went. We actually did a bit of downhill walking on a tarmac road, and I turned around, started going backwards. It was a straight path. I knew it wasn't going to fall off anywhere, and it really helped my legs because I don't mind ups, I don't mind downs, and there's good bits and bad bits about both. But going down at a certain angle seems to really get my knees. This was that angle, so I turned round and just walked backwards. I've lost my notes again. Hang on a sec. Oh yeah, we passed. I saw this sign for a cream tea cottage. And I love Devon cream teas. what the Brits call a scone or scone. Put a big wodge of this incredible cream on it called Devon clotted cream, and then strawberry jam on top. Oh my God, my mouth was watering. But the shop was closed. I couldn't believe it. I would definitely have stopped in there and had that, even though I'd had another full English breakfast this morning. We went down a very pretty little path after this, which had some yellow flowers, which John said were primulas, and I checked them out on my iPhone photo app, and it turns out they were cowslips. But frankly, I couldn't tell you. But pretty flowers. You can see the signs of spring coming all around us. We met some guys who were putting some rhododendrons in, and they said these are going to be blossoming in a few weeks' time, and you're just going to love the look of those. Of course, I'm going to be further down the path, and he said, but there's going to be rhododendrons all the way around this path, so I'm looking forward to that. We came to a field shortly after that, that little path, and we were warned to keep closely to the waymarks. And the waymarks basically took us around the outskirts of a huge field, from which we were fenced off. And then at the end of this walk round the field, a right of way was also blocked off at the end. So somebody clearly had an argument. And so we had to take a slight diversion, carried on going up. It was a real heavy climb for about, 200-300 feet. And then we had a bit of a respite from the climb that took us on a flat, sort of very peaty path. Now, when I say peaty, it's the Irish type, sort of boggy type path. And it was very spongy and very nice to walk on as well. And then we had another glorious cliff edge path. I've already mentioned these already. We're right at the edge of the cliff. I always feel safe up there. John said to me, "This is a great place if you don't mind heights." And he said, "I'm scared of heights." But he was doing it, so he wasn't having any real problems. So we had this cliff edge path which went round mini headland to another mini headland, and we saw sheep and we saw goats on the path again, as I say. But the path eventually led down to a place called Heddon's Mouth, which I presume was just an inlet where a lot of water came in. And as we were heading further and further down, there was a sign to Hunter's Pub about halfway through our hike. Naturally, being a Brit, wanted to find the pub. Oh my God, couldn't find it. And the sign at the bottom looked like it was sending us the wrong way. By the way, I was using All Trails app, which I enjoy. Can't quite work out, frankly, exactly how to make it work properly, but I kind of enjoy using it. And I was following that. I wasn't going to go divert from that. And then, frankly, this entire path is very well signposted, so you pretty much know where you're going all the time. And I was expecting us to walk right past Hunter's Pub, but it said Hunter's Pub, half a mile. Anybody who knows me, even for a beer, knows that I will not divert half a mile. And so we missed out on Hunter's Pub, which was slightly worrying because I hesitated. Sorry, something happened there. Don't worry about it. Carry on. I didn't want to miss the pub, so we started walking towards it. We still couldn't see it. Sorry about that. I had to cough, and I had to work out how to pause this machine, but it's working again now. We saw the signpost. It said half a mile to Hunter's Pub, and that was too much for us. But then we went round another turn, another little corner, which headed towards that general direction, and it said the path went up the mountain. It said footpath to Hunter's Pub, but we didn't know how far. We walked about 300 yards. We had to turn back, and we just couldn't chance walking extra miles because we ended up walking something like 14 or 15 miles. Sorry, I had to cough again. The wind really whipped up again, and some of the paths did become downright dangerous, frankly. We've taken some great pictures, and I'm going to try to put one or two of them in the show notes. I'm not sure how well it's going to show, but they got very narrow. Once again, goats and sheep. The final climb, which was another really extended climb, took us to the Great Hangman, which is the highest point on the entire trail. And the Great Hangman is a path that goes to the summit of this hill, and people put rocks on there like a massive cairn. Basically, just throw rocks to the top of it, and then probably just hang about, take a couple of pictures, and move around. You've got a great 360-degree view from there. You can see across I think it's the Bristol Channel, to Wales. You can look around to see Cornwall and Devon in different directions, and it's a 360-degree view, and magnificent, and I thoroughly enjoyed that part of it. So I thought we were pretty much done, and we were going to get down into Combe Martin, but then we ended up with some very severe downs. I found that, once again, very difficult. It only has to be a certain angle, and it really gets me. Instead of going to a pub in the village, we went straight to the Packet Cards pub, which is where we're staying. And I ate quickly and came to record. I'm tired now. I don't know how well this has come, but that was the end of my day number 3. So I can only apologise again for not having proper notes for this. It's been a long evening to get this done. Hopefully you get some flavour of the walk. Don't let any of this take anything away from the hike itself. This is a proper full-on hike. It's not a walk. It's I think today, for example, we had 3,600 of uphill. Sorry, 3,600 feet of uphill, and that ain't nothing. And I found it to be quite exhausting, frankly. And I feel good. My feet are fine. My legs are fine. My knees are tough on those downhills. They're really getting me. They feel fine now, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm clean. I'm warm. I'm fed, and I've recorded this now for you guys. This will be better going forward, but stay with it. I think it's going to be exciting to have this pub. By the way, one thing I want you to remember, I'm doing this for a charity which I'm deeply involved with, Parenting Matters. There is a link in the show notes, and I hope some of you, if you listen to this, think it's worth supporting an organisation which basically helps families survive. So how bad can that be? But I'll see you again next Monday, and until then, cheers.